The sound was a physical thing, a sharp, percussive crack that sliced through the genteel hum of the office. It was the sound of Elara Vance's career aspirations hitting a glass ceiling so thick and so polished it might as well have been solid diamond. The memo, printed on the firm's heavy, cream-colored stock, lay on her desk, its words burning into her retinas. Promotion to Senior Vice President, Strategic Acquisitions, Julian Hawthorne. Julian, of course. Julian, with his perfectly knotted ties and a pedigree that stretched back to the Mayflower. Julian, whose most strategic acquisition to date had been convincing the senior partners he played golf half as well as he claimed. Elara's knuckles were white where she gripped the edge of her mahogany desk. She had poured 3 years of her life into this firm, her blood, sweat, and tears seeping into the very fibers of its Persian rugs. She had closed the Blackwood account no one else could touch, had innovated a due diligence process that saved the company millions. And for what? A soft, sympathetic cough came from the doorway. Margaret, the septuagenarian office manager who had seen more corporate coups than a political strategist, stood there, her kind eyes shadowed with regret. "It's a shame, dear. A real shame. But you know how the old boys are. They like a stable image. A family man." Elara's smile felt brittle, like sugar glass about to shatter. "A family man," she repeated, the words ash in her mouth. Julian Hawthorne's idea of stability was dating a different socialite each month, his engagements as fleeting as the seasons. But he wore a ring, or at least the potential for one. He represented tradition, continuity. And in the hallowed, oak-paneled halls of Sterling and Sterling, tradition was the only currency that truly mattered. That evening, the walls of her impeccably tidy apartment felt like they were closing in. The city lights of Boston glittered, a cold, indifferent tapestry outside her window. A bottle of Pinot Noir was half empty on the coffee table, its contents doing little to dull the sting of injustice. On the screen of her laptop, the image of Julian's smug face was plastered across the company's internal announcement. "It's archaic. It's barbaric," she fumed into her phone, the device pressed to her ear. "Tell me about it," came the wry, comforting voice of her best friend, Chloe. "Want to come over? We can burn effigies of Julian. I've got some old socks that perfectly capture his essence." Elara managed a watery laugh. "Tempting, but no. I don't get it, Chloe. What more can I do? I've done everything right." "Everything except being born with a Y chromosome and a trust fund," Chloe quipped, then her tone softened. "Look, you heard what Margaret said. They want stable. They want family. It's their idiotic, outdated checklist. So, I should just go out, get married, and pop out a 2.5 kid statistic to secure my corner office?" Elara snapped, the bitterness overflowing. There was a pause on the other end of the line, a silence so loaded it was almost audible. "Well," Chloe said slowly, a dangerous, scheming note creeping into her voice. "Who said anything about actually getting married?" Elara sat up, the wine swirling dangerously in her glass. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about giving them what they want. A narrative. A picture-perfect, stable, engaged woman. Someone whose personal life is so settled, so unassailable, that even the old guard can't find a fault. You just need the right prop." "A prop," Elara repeated, her mind reeling. "Chloe, I'm not hiring an actor." "Who said anything about hiring?" Chloe's voice was now brimming with gleeful mischief. "I'm offering you my brother." The world tilted. "Liam." The name came out as a strangled whisper. Liam Walsh. Chloe's older brother. A man who was to commitment what cats were to water, instinctively, profoundly averse. He was a freelance travel photographer whose passport had more stamps than a post office, his life a series of breathtaking vistas and fleeting connections. He was charming, devastatingly handsome in a tousled, I just rolled out of a hammock in Bali kind of way, and about as reliable as a weather forecast. The last Elara had heard, he was in Patagonia, chasing the light and presumably avoiding anything resembling a long-term plan. He's perfect, Chloe insisted. 1. He's ridiculously good-looking, which will make the whole thing more believable. 2. He owes me about 1,000,000 favors, the most recent being that I convinced our mother he was in a Zen meditation retreat and not just avoiding her calls for 3 months. And 3. He's the ultimate commitment-phobe. The second this promotion is yours, he'll be on the first plane to Mongolia, no messy feelings, no strings attached. It's the perfect temporary arrangement. Elara's pragmatic mind, the one that excelled at risk assessment and strategic planning, was screaming that this was a catastrophe in making. But her ambitious heart, bruised and desperate, was listening intently. A fake engagement. To Liam Walsh. It was insane. It was reckless. It was perhaps her only shot. He would never agree, she finally said, her voice weak. Leave my brother to me, Chloe said, her tone leaving no room for argument. You just start shopping for a convincing but not too expensive ring. The line went dead. Elara stared at her reflection in the dark window. Her own eyes stared back, wide with a mixture of sheer terror and a flicker of desperate, wild hope. Liam Walsh was, as predicted, less than enthused. He stood in Elara's living room a week later, looking like a storm cloud that had forgotten how to rain. He was taller than she remembered, his shoulders broader, tanned from a sun that had never touched Boston in April. He wore a worn leather jacket and a scowl that could curdle milk. Let me get this straight, he said, his voice a low rumble that vibrated through the quiet apartment. He pointed a finger at Elara, then at his sister. You, my little sister, want me to pretend to be engaged to your best friend for an undetermined amount of time to help her get a job. It's not a job, it's a promotion. A vice presidency, Elara corrected, straightening her spine. She felt absurdly prim in her tailored trousers and silk blouse next to his casual dishevelment. Forgive me for not grasping the nuance, he drawled, running a hand through his already messy dark hair. This is the single most insane thing you have ever proposed, Chloe. And that includes the time you tried to start a dog-walking business for hedgehogs. They were very slow, but their emotional support was unparalleled, Chloe retorted, unfazed. She was perched on the arm of Elara's sofa, looking immensely pleased with herself. Come on, Liam. It's a few months tops. A few social events, a couple of dinners where you hold her hand and look adoring. You're a photographer, for heaven's sake. You're good at framing a pretty picture. Think of this as human portraiture. Liam's gaze swung back to Elara, and she felt it like a physical touch, assessing, skeptical, and deeply unsettling. His eyes were the color of the sea before a storm, a turbulent gray-green. And you're on board with this charade? He asked her directly. Elara met his gaze, forcing a confidence she didn't feel. I need this, Liam. This firm operates on a different set of rules. My work isn't enough. I need the perception of stability. You'd be doing me an incredible favor. A favor, he repeated, his lips twisting into a sardonic smile. I don't do stable, Elara. I don't do perception. I take pictures of crumbling ruins and active volcanoes. That's my comfort zone. And after this, you can go right back to them, she said, her voice softening, pleading. No, Thais. No expectations. We just have to be convincing enough for the partners at Sterling and Sterling to see me as a safe bet. He was silent for a long moment, his eyes scanning her face, taking in the determined set of her jaw and the undisguised desperation in her eyes. He let out a long, weary sigh, the sound of a man capitulating to forces beyond his understanding. Fine, he gritted out. But there are rules. 1. We have an exit strategy. A firm date when this ends. 2. We keep the physical contact to an absolute, believable minimum. And 3, he said, leveling a stern look at both women. You tell no one. No one. This dies with the three of us. Understood? Elara's heart hammered against her ribs. Understood. Chloe clapped her hands. Excellent. Now let's workshop your meet-cute. I'm thinking it was a whirlwind romance. You reconnected at my birthday party last year, and sparks flew. It was passionate and sudden. Very unlike both of you, which makes it perfect. Liam muttered something under his breath that sounded suspiciously like, "I'm going to need a drink." Elara just nodded, her mind already racing. The first test was in 5 days, the Sterling and Sterling annual spring gala. The partners' wives would be there, a battalion of pearl-clad socialites whose opinions held a surprising amount of sway. It was the perfect stage for their debut. The game was on. The gala was a symphony of wealth and tradition, held in the grand ballroom of a historic Boston hotel. Crystal chandeliers cast a soft, golden light over women in couture gowns and men in black tie. Elara felt like an imposter in her own skin, the deep emerald green of her dress feeling more like a costume than clothing. Liam's arm was linked with hers, his body a solid, warm presence beside her. He had, to her immense surprise, cleaned up spectacularly. The leather jacket was replaced by a perfectly fitted tuxedo, the scowl by a mask of polite, charming attentiveness. He looked the part. He looked, she had to admit, breathtaking. "Nervous?" he murmured, his voice a low hum meant only for her as they navigated the crowd. "Terrified," she whispered back, her smile fixed in place. "The man with the walrus mustache by the champagne fountain is Mr. Henderson. He believes marriage is a sacred institution that prevents corporate espionage. Don't disappoint him." Liam's lips quirked. "No espionage on my watch." He squeezed her hand, a gesture that was meant to be reassuring but sent an unexpected jolt up her arm. They were swarmed almost immediately. Margaret appeared, her eyes twinkling behind her spectacles as she took in Liam. "Oh, my dear, he's even more handsome than you described." Elara felt a blush creep up her neck. She had, under Chloe's strict direction, sprinkled details of her fiancé into conversations for the past week. Liam, the photographer, so passionate about his work. Yes, it was a bit of a whirlwind, but when you know, you know. Julian Hawthorne sauntered over, a predatory smile on his face. "Elara. And this must be the mysterious fiancé I've been hearing about." Julian Hawthorne. He extended a hand to Liam, his gaze calculating. "Liam Walsh," Liam said, his grip firm, his smile easy. "A pleasure. Elara's told me so much about you." The way he said it implied Elara had told him nothing good, and Julian's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "All good, I hope," Julian said smoothly. "So, Liam, what is it you do?" Elara was rather vague. This was the moment. The moment a freelance travel photographer could sound like an unstable, bohemian drifter. Liam didn't miss a beat. He turned slightly, his body angling protectively towards Elara. "I capture stories through a lens. Currently, I'm working on a long-term project documenting the intersection of ancient trade routes and modern communities." It was a brilliant, elegant reframing of his nomadic lifestyle. It sounded profound, artistic, and crucially stable. Elara could have kissed him. "How fascinating," Julian said, his interest clearly waning in the face of such cultured poise. "Well, congratulations to you both." As the evening wore on, Liam was flawless. He listened attentively to the partners' boring stories, complimented their wives on their jewelry, and his hand never strayed from the small of Elara's back. It was a constant, warm pressure that grounded her. He played the part of a man utterly besotted, his gaze frequently finding hers, a soft, private smile playing on his lips that was so convincing it made her breath catch. During a slow dance, his arm wrapped around her waist, pulling her close. She could feel the solid muscle of his chest through the fine fabric of his tux, smell the clean, spicy scent of his cologne. It was unnerving. "You're very good at this," she whispered into his shoulder, her voice slightly unsteady. He looked down at her, his stormy eyes unreadable. "It's just a different kind of performance, Elara. A different kind of lens." The word should have been a comfort, a reminder that this was all fake. But as his thumb stroked a slow, absent-minded circle on her back, she felt a dangerous, unwelcome thrill. This was a problem. A very big problem. The weeks that followed were a masterclass in sustained deception. Liam moved into her spare room, a necessary step for verisimilitude, as Chloe had put it. You can't have a fiancé who's never at your place. What if Henderson does a drive-by? Their coexistence was a carefully choreographed ballet of politeness and manufactured intimacy. They developed a backstory. They'd met at Chloe's birthday, but the real connection happened when he'd surprised her with a visit after a trip to Iceland, and they'd talked all night. The ring, a simple, elegant solitaire that was a loan from Chloe, never left her finger. They attended dinner parties, where Liam charmed her colleagues with stories that were just sanitized enough. They went on date nights to popular restaurants, knowing they'd be seen. They even hosted a painfully awkward dinner for her parents, during which Liam discussed the migratory patterns of Arctic terns with her father, an ornithologist, with surprising expertise. And through it all, the promotion hung in the balance. Mr. Sterling himself took her aside after meeting. "My wife adores your young man, Elara," he'd said, his tone paternal. "She says he has an old soul. It's good to see a young person so settled." It was working. The ground was shifting in her favor. But the real shift was happening inside her apartment, in the quiet spaces between performances. She discovered that Liam was a surprisingly good cook, whipping up fragrant Thai curries that filled her sterile kitchen with life. He left photography books on the coffee table, and she found herself leafing through them, captivated by his unique perspective, a lone tree in a vast desert, the wrinkled hands of a fisherman, the joyful chaos of a street market. He was an artist, and she was beginning to see the world through his eyes. One rainy Tuesday, she came home late, exhausted and defeated after a grueling day. A major client was being difficult, and Julian had been insufferable. She kicked off her heels and slumped onto the sofa, not even bothering to turn on the light. Liam emerged from the kitchen, holding 2 mugs of steaming tea. He took one look at her and wordlessly handed her a mug, then sat down on the opposite end of the sofa, giving her space. "Bad day?" he asked quietly. She nodded, the simple kindness threatening to undo her. "The worst. Sometimes I wonder if any of this is worth it. The politics, the games, this." She gestured vaguely between them. He was silent for a moment, watching the rain streak down the window. "You know," he said, his voice thoughtful, "in my line of work, you learn to wait for the light. The perfect, golden hour. You can be in the most beautiful place on earth, but if the light isn't right, the picture is flat. It's worthless." He turned his head to look at her. "Maybe you've just been waiting in the wrong light, Elara." His words struck a chord so deep within her it vibrated. It was the first time he'd spoken to her not as a co-conspirator, but as a friend. Something warm and fragile blossomed in her chest. The line between their fiction and her reality was beginning to blur, and it terrified her. The turning point came with the firm's weekend retreat at a luxurious lodge in the Berkshires. It was the ultimate test, 2 full days of forced camaraderie and professional scrutiny under the guise of hiking and team-building exercises. Their cabin was a rustic chic affair with 1 bedroom and a living room with a pull-out couch. The unspoken tension of the sleeping arrangements hung in the air between them. "I'll take the couch," Liam said immediately, tossing his duffel bag onto it. "You don't have to," she started. "Yes," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. "Ido." The first day was a success. Liam was in his element outdoors, his easy confidence winning over even the most skeptical partners during a guided nature walk. That evening, by the massive stone fireplace in the main lodge, the atmosphere was convivial. Wine flowed, and the conversation turned personal. Mr. Sterling, a glass of brandy in hand, beamed at them. "So, Liam, Elara. We're all dying to know. How did he propose?" Elara's been terribly tight-lipped. Elara's blood ran cold. They had a cover story, of course. A romantic dinner. But in the pressure of the moment, her mind went blank. She felt every eye in the room on them. Liam didn't hesitate. He took her hand, lacing his fingers through hers, his touch firm and sure. He looked at her, and his gaze was so full of tender, fabricated memory that her heart stuttered. It wasn't at a dinner, he said softly, his voice carrying just enough to be heard by the circle. It was on a beach in Maine, just after sunrise. The light it was like liquid gold. And Elara was there, wrapped in a blanket, her hair all messy from the wind, and she was laughing at something I'd said. He paused, his thumb stroking the back of her hand, and Elara felt the gesture deep in her bones. And I just knew. I didn't have a ring. I didn't have a speech. I just got down on one knee in the sand and asked her. It was the most imperfect, perfect moment of my life. The room erupted in a collective awe. The partners' wives dabbed at their eyes. Mr. Sterling clapped Liam on the shoulder. Now that's a story. Well done, son. Elara could only stare at him, her throat tight. The lie was so beautiful, so vividly painted, that for a terrifying second, she wished it were true. The way he was looking at her, it didn't feel like a performance anymore. It felt real. Later, back in the cabin, the silence was thick and heavy. The charade had reached a new, dangerous level of intimacy. That was quick thinking, she said, her voice hushed. He was standing by the window, looking out at the dark forest. It's what they wanted to hear. A good story. It didn't feel like just a story, she whispered. He turned then, his face shadowed. Elara, he said, and her name on his lips was a warning and a plea. Don't what? Don't confuse the performance with the person. I'm just the guy standing in the right light to make the picture work. Remember the rules. But the rules felt flimsy and distant, shattered by the image he had created of a sunrise on a beach, of a moment of perfect, impulsive certainty. She went to bed that night with the ghost of his touch on her hand and the devastating realization that she was falling for her fake fiancé. The fallout was as inevitable as it was brutal. They returned from the retreat floating in a bubble of unspoken tension and stolen glances. The promotion was now a virtual certainty. Henderson had all but confirmed it. The plan had worked to perfection. And then Liam's agent called. A prestigious magazine was offering him a once-in-a-lifetime assignment, a 6-month project documenting the disappearing islands of the South Pacific. It was everything he'd ever wanted. The exit strategy was presenting itself on a silver platter. He told her over takeout sushi, his expression a mixture of excitement and grim resolve. The contract is for 6 months. They need an answer in 48 hours. Elara's chopsticks froze midair. 6 months. The finality of it was a physical blow. I see, she said, her voice carefully neutral. This is it, Elara, he said, not unkindly. The finish line. You'll get the promotion. I'll take the assignment. We can stage a quiet, amicable breakup a few months from now. Long-distance struggles, you know? No hard feelings. No hard feelings. The words were so hollow they echoed. There were feelings, a torrent of them. She was in love with him. The realization was as bright and searing as a lightning strike. Of course, she managed to say. That's the plan. But the universe, it seemed, had other ideas. The next morning, she was called into Mr. Sterling's office. Her heart soared. This was it, the official offer. But the look on his face was not one of congratulations. It was stern, disappointed. Julian Hawthorne stood beside his desk, looking like the cat that got the canary. Elara, Mr. Sterling began, steepling his fingers. A rather disturbing piece of information has come to light. Her blood turned to ice. An anonymous source, Julian interjected, unable to contain his glee, provided some very interesting flight manifests and credit card receipts. It seems your fiancé, Liam, purchased a one-way ticket to Patagonia the day after Chloe's birthday party last year. The party where you claim your whirlwind romance began. He slid a piece of paper across the desk. He was in Argentina for the following 3 months. Elara's world shattered. The carefully constructed house of cards collapsed in an instant. She was caught. The lies, the deception, all laid bare. We at Sterling and Sterling value many things, Elara, Mr. Sterling said, his voice cold. But above all, we value integrity. This charade demonstrates a profound lack of it. The promotion is, of course, out of the question. Your future with this firm will be reconsidered. She was dismissed. She walked out of the office in a daze, the eyes of her colleagues burning into her back. She was ruined. She found Liam at the apartment, packing his camera gear. He took one look at her pale, stricken face and knew. "They know," she whispered, sinking onto the couch. He listened in silence as she recounted the meeting, his expression growing darker with every word. When she finished, he slammed a lens cap down on the table. It was Julian, wasn't it? He must have hired someone to dig. "It doesn't matter," she said, the fight gone out of her. "It's over. The promotion, my career, this." She waved a hand between them. "You should take the assignment. Go. There's nothing left for you here." He stared at her, a storm raging in his eyes. "Is that what you think?" he asked, his voice dangerously quiet. "That there's nothing here for me? What else is there, Liam? A fake fiancé with a ruined career? This was the deal. The performance is over." For a long moment, he just looked at her, as if truly seeing her for the first time, not as a partner in a scheme, not as his sister's best friend, but as Elara. Vulnerable, defeated, and heartbreakingly real. Then, without a word, he turned, picked up his half-packed bag, and walked out the door. The sound of it closing was the loudest, most final sound Elara had ever heard. The weeks that followed were a gray, featureless landscape. She was placed on probation at work, a humiliating purgatory. The pitying looks and whispered conversations were a constant torment. She avoided Chloe, too ashamed to face her. The apartment, once a sanctuary, felt cavernous and empty without Liam's chaotic presence. The photography books were gone. The smell of his coffee no longer lingered in the morning. She had lost everything she thought she wanted, and in the process, she had discovered the one thing she truly wanted was gone, too. Chloe finally cornered her, refusing to be shut out. "I don't care about the stupid firm, Elara. I care about you. And I care about my idiot brother, who is currently moping around his studio like a lost puppy and not taking the South Pacific assignment." That piece of information sent a fragile, impossible spark of hope through Elara's numbness. "He didn't take it?" "No," Chloe said, her eyes soft. "He says the light isn't right." The words were an echo, a callback to a rainy evening and a moment of unexpected connection. "Maybe you've just been waiting in the wrong light." It was that echo that gave her the courage one evening. She wasn't fighting for the promotion anymore. She was fighting for something infinitely more valuable. She went to his studio, a converted loft space in a less polished part of the city, filled with the scent of developer and prints hanging from clothespins. He was there, staring at a large, blown-up photograph on the wall. It wasn't of a crumbling ruin or an active volcano. It was of her. It was taken during the retreat, on one of their hikes. She wasn't looking at the camera. She was looking out over the valley, a soft, unguarded smile on her face, the wind catching strands of her hair. The morning light caught her in a way that made her look incandescent. It was a picture of someone truly, deeply happy. He heard her come in and turned. He looked tired, but his gaze was clear and direct. "You didn't go," she said, her voice trembling. "No." "Why?" He gestured to the photograph. "Because I realized I'd been chasing the wrong things. I was so busy documenting the world, trying to capture moments before they disappeared, that I never let myself be part of one. I was always an observer. Until you." He took a step towards her. "You and this insane, ridiculous, wonderful charade. It was the first real thing I'd been a part of in years." Tears welled in her eyes. "It was fake, Liam." "Was it?" he asked, closing the distance between them. "Was it fake when I told that story about the beach? Because for me, in that moment, it was the truest thing I'd ever said. I might have made up the sand and the sunrise, Elara, but the feeling was real. I love you." The words hung in the air, healing and absolving. "I love you, too," she whispered, the admission freeing her from the last of her fears. "And I'm so sorry for everything." He cupped her face in his hands, his touch finally, gloriously real. "Don't be. It led us here." When he kissed her, it was nothing like the chaste, performative kisses they had shared for an audience. This was a promise. This was a beginning. It was filled with the truth of all their fabricated moments, now made genuine. 1 year later, the letterhead was different. It was sleek, modern, and bore the name of a dynamic, forward-thinking competitor that had aggressively headhunted Elara 6 months prior. The title beside her name was Senior Vice President, Innovation and Strategy. She had gotten the job on her own merits, her reputation for the Blackwood account, and her innovative processes having circulated in the industry far beyond the oak-paneled walls of Sterling and Sterling. On her finger, the simple solitaire was gone. In its place was a unique, beautiful ring featuring a polished stone from a beach in Maine, set in raw gold. It wasn't a loan. It was a promise. She was packing a small suitcase. Liam, his skin tanned from a recent project in the Greek islands, leaned against the doorframe, watching her with a look of profound contentment. "Are you sure you don't want to come?" she asked. "It's just a conference. You could take pictures of board executives napping during keynote speeches." He grinned, that easy, genuine grin that now belonged to her. "Tempting, but I'll pass. I have a gallery showing to prep for." His first solo exhibition, The Light Right Here, was a collection of portraits, not of distant places but of people and moments close to home. The centerpiece was the photograph of her, from the retreat. He walked over and wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her head. "Besides, I think you should have your moment. All on your own. You earned it." She leaned back into his embrace, a deep, unwavering happiness settling in her soul. She had set out to secure a promotion by pretending to be engaged to a commitment-phobe. In the process, she had lost the job she thought she wanted, but found the career she was meant to have. She had entered a fake relationship, only to discover the real, enduring love of her life. The greatest acquisition of her life hadn't been a company or a title. It had been this. A partnership built not on convenience, but on truth, trust, and the perfect, golden light of finally being seen for who you truly are.